Hi everyone, my name is Kat. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought it would be cool to do a history-based episode on how the natural health movement ties in with 1940s Nazi Germany. So without further ado, here we go. In 1942, the Nazi physician Werner Koloff coined the slogan, "Leave our food as natural as possible." This was part of propagandizing natural health to support and regenerate the Aryan body. So the Nazis were concerned with health for two main reasons. Number one, it supported Hitler's master race ideology. And two, because they believed that natural health related to them not losing another world war. Ideas of nationalism were tied into all of this, into eating organic, less processed food, eating more naturally on the whole, eating less refined things like sugar and meat. The Nazis aligned their natural eating with a particular phrase that they coined, blood and soil, Blut und Boden. Prioritizing health for political gain was established well before Nazi Germany though, way back into the mid-19th century. Hunger had been one of the things that had defeated Germany in the First World War. So naturally, Germans wanted to make sure that they were eating well for the next one. Hunger was a problem on the German home front from 1915 to 1917, and it even caused riots. People who were normally respectable people were even stealing potatoes and bread. And the German government took note of that. Germany was relying on imports for some of their food. The ability to survive without relying on foreign imports was a priority for Nazis. This, in addition to economic relief, meant that things like beef and pork that were imported were replaced with local fish. And white bread and whole grain bread that they were eating was replaced with rye that was grown in the soil in Germany. Hitler had a belief like many other right-wing Germans had, which was that Wilhelm's Germany in the First World War fell because the home front broke. And the home front broke because they weren't self-sufficient and they didn't have enough food. And so they never wanted this to happen again. And just for reference, Wilhelm II was Germany's last emperor from 1888 to 1918. So as you can guess, replacing everything like the red meat with fish and, sugar with local sources, probably things like honey and other things that they could actually produce. All of these non-additive, organic, whole foods really tied in with this belief system of creating that race, that special race. So these ideas really propelled that natural health agenda. This also made them more economically efficient, because if you were to take something like, a wheat grain and you were to completely reduce it down to making a white bread, then you're actually not using the whole parts of that grain. And so if you use that whole grain, the food is stretching farther for more people. At this time, the Nazis were also making a connection between industrialization and things like chewing too much tobacco, drinking too much alcohol, pollution of the industrial era, and they were associating these things with unhealthiness, also cramped conditions and tight living spaces. And so they wanted to do the opposite of that so that, again, they could have a superior race, because they were seeing those health issues happening out of those things. There was also fears of racial degeneration, the idea that generations to come were going to be impacted by people's health. And they wanted to avert that, so again, they could have a superior race. Now this ties in with eugenics. Eugenics is the practice of mating selective hereditary traits together in human beings and making sure that everybody is free of those hereditary issues that come along, defects and things like that. And eugenics is tied in with ableism, which is heavily seen in the natural health movement, especially with the rejection of certain medications or medical treatments, or just being generally averse to that. Just having this idea and notion that if you worked hard enough and you ate clean enough and you exercised enough, things like high blood pressure would never happen. Even though Nazi Germany fell in 1945, natural food is still a very important part of German culture. Now, this does not mean that Germans are Nazis by any means, and it does not mean that they hold fascist ideals. Natural eating still makes a lot of sense for public health and for economics. Now, what's really interesting about today and how this all ties in, we're kind of seeing a lot of different things that sort of relate back to that 1940s Germany. One of them is that nations are hoarding medicine right now. You know what I'm talking about. And then doing a lot of wasting and sort of looking at it from a perspective of helping their own selves and helping their own nation. When this is really a global problem, and if we don't solve it together, it's really not going to get solved. Now, this seems to poetically tie in with some of those natural health people who refuse that very medication that the nations are trying to push to give their own nation an edge, because these natural health food people want to utilize things like organic food and exercise to completely offset any kind of harm that would come to you from everything from cancers to deadly viruses. Some of them are even using the term purebloods because they want to remain pure without these medications that will help them. What's really interesting to note is that a lot of these natural health influencers have things like fillers and breast implants and things that are very, very unnatural. I also see this in the bodybuilding world and the fitness world. There's a lot of unhealthiness. That's a whole nother story in its own self. But there's a lot of anti-medicine people who inject a lot of things like steroids and other medications. I want to be clear that I am not calling all people in the natural health community a racist or a fascist or even anti-medicine. That's not what I mean. But there's no denying that a lot of them feel this way, and they don't think they even realize that their beliefs tie into older ideas about eugenics and ableism and racism. I talk more about the natural health movement and its deep ties to ableism in my video, Addicted to Finding a Cure. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope that it shines some light on how history repeats itself and sort of what's happening right now in our crazy world. Until next time.